They're just kids.
I know.
What happened to us?
Maybe we stopped looking for the light.
Maybe.
God damn. That's that's a lot.
Welcome back to my scene study series where I analyze and discuss scenes in The Last of Us Part 2 in order to deepen our understanding of its story, as well as certain facets of storytelling in general. Today I'll be discussing the scene we just watched, which takes place at the end of Abby's second day in Seattle. This is one of my favorite scenes in the game because despite only containing around 10 lines of dialogue and only 5 within the core scene itself, its rich subtext says so much about Abby's journey as well as the overarching themes of the entire game. Before we dive into the scene itself, some context is needed, so let's take stock of pertinent things that have happened in the story chronologically by the time this scene begins. When Abby set off to find Owen in the middle of Seattle Day 1, she had no idea that she would end the day with an entirely new quest, never mind that the quest would involve 2 runaway Seraphite kids. At this point in Abby's emotional journey, she has been back in Seattle for about 6 weeks following the murder of Joel Miller, who killed her father at the end of The Last of Us Part 1. She isn't on speaking terms with Owen, her former boyfriend, and things are tense between her and his current girlfriend, Mel, too. Abby isn't dealing with any of the feelings that she has been experiencing since that fateful day in Jackson. Feelings of numbness, guilt, confusion, and shame. She hasn't been sleeping either, still plagued by nightmares of the day her father died, despite the fact that he has now been avenged, and has been wearing herself out physically in order to sleep without dreaming. When she learned that Owen went missing on patrol, Abby was quick to disobey direct orders from Isaac, the ruthless leader of the WLF, and set off alone across Seraphite and infected-filled territory to find him at the Seattle Aquarium. On her way, though, she was captured by Seraphites in one of their nests and strung up by her neck in preparation to be freed. It was then that 2 Seraphite kids, Lev and Yara, appeared, having been pursued by their own people for reasons yet unknown, and worked with Abby to free her and escape the hostile Seraphites and infected in the area. The older sibling, Yara, received a shattered arm as punishment for fleeing the Seraphites and harboring her brother Lev, whom they call an apostate. After the 3 of them got to safety, Abby set Yara's arm and told the siblings her name, warning them of their location being in a heavy traffic area. Abby set off into the night once again to find Owen. Abby found him on his docked boat at the aquarium, and they had a tense confrontation about their relationship. If you'd like an in-depth analysis of this scene, it's already up on my channel. The fight turned into sex, which becomes one more thing that Abby feels guilty for, because Owen is still dating their friend Mel, with whom he is also expecting a baby. The next day, Abby set off to find Lev and Yara because she felt guilty about leaving them behind. Finding Yara in bad shape, Abby carried her back to the aquarium, hoping that Owen would have some medical supplies on hand. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Owen's girlfriend Mel had shown up in the meantime. Abby convinced Mel, who is a nurse, to examine Yara's arm. When Mel determined that Yara has compartment syndrome, which could lead to gangrene if the limb does not get amputated, Abby volunteered to travel to the WLF-occupied hospital on the other side of town to get the necessary medical supplies so Mel could perform the surgery. Wary of the Seraphite squads in the area, Lev offered to accompany Abby on the journey and take her through a Seraphite shortcut via what he called sky bridges. These sky bridges turned out to be constructed out of a fallen crane near the top of a skyscraper, and Abby, who is acrophobic, had to face her worst fear by crossing them. After almost falling to their deaths and having to fight their way through an infested hotel, Abby and Lev finally arrived at the Lake Hill Hospital. There, Abby was detained by the WLF because she had been reported as AWOL since the previous day. With the help of her friend Nora, Abby escaped and descended into the depths of the hospital to search for supplies. There, she encountered a monstrosity called the Rat King, an amalgamation of infected people trapped in the hospital during the initial outbreak. After fighting her way out, Abby and Lev stole a WLF boat and made their way back to the aquarium. With the medical supplies acquired, the scene takes place outside the operating room while Mel performs the amputation surgery on Yara. In storytelling, the given circumstances are everything that has happened to the characters immediately prior to a scene, which informs and influences their motivations and actions. In this case, relevant given circumstances include this conversation Abby had with Manny and Mel while en route to the FOB on day 1.
God, remember when we could pass through this area without getting jumped by scars? Getting nostalgic about the truce? Easier days, huh?
Too easy. We let our guard down, and they strung up an entire squad.
That was in retaliation to us shooting those kids.
Okay, but those kids attacked our guys. What would you do?
I don't know, not riddle them with bullets?
I'd rather save our people.
Manny, they're kids. It's not their fault. Not our fault either. Those deaths are on them. Okay.
This conversation goes to show how deeply the WLF xenophobia has been indoctrinated into Abby and Manny, the top soldiers. They've been conditioned to view the Seraphites as inhuman, and not even the children are innocent for the crimes they perceive the Seraphites to have committed against them. This lack of compassion startles Mel, who herself is carrying a child, and may be wondering what this world has in store for them if the Seraphites hold the same views against the WLF children, which, as it turns out, they do. It's also impossible to analyze the scene without acknowledging the conversation Abby had with Owen the night before on his boat, where he tried to get her to see how far she has strayed from the hopeful and empathetic girl she was when she was a Firefly. After being unable to kill an old Seraphite man, Owen faced his own crisis of circumstance and told Abby he is going to go find the Fireflies, much to her dismay. Abby rejected the Fireflies, and by extension Owen, because in her mind the Fireflies failed, and by WLF standards, failure means weakness. And at that point, Abby could not wrestle with her own failures and weaknesses. Then there was the conversation Abby had with Owen earlier that morning, where Abby was unable to give him an answer as to why she was going to such great lengths to save these Seraphite kids.
Why are you doing this?
It's possible that at that point she didn't yet know why, but was merely following her gut instinct after her disturbing nightmare from the previous night. She wasn't able to give Lev an answer when he asked later that day either.
My ears are ringing.
If that's the worst of it, we got off lucky.
Maybe it wasn't luck.
Maybe it was.
Some wolves believe in God. I've heard them pray.
Well, I don't. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die for me.
Then what are you doing here? Why did you come back for us?
Guilt.
Of what? You don't owe us anything.
I just needed to lighten the load a bit.
Other important and more immediate given circumstances include the entirety of Abby's journey to and from the WLF hospital, during which time she bonded with Lev. At first a tense companionship born out of necessity, Lev and Abby slowly began to open up to each other over the course of the trip.
What the hell did you do?
I shaved my head.
They want to kill a little boy because he shaved his head.
I wasn't allowed. It's a rule. I broke it.
Jeez. So why'd you do it?
I don't know.
Pretty punk rock of you.
Punk rock?
I get the impression you don't follow most rules.
Oh. I guess so.
By virtue of working with someone who was supposed to be her enemy, Abby's formerly black and white perception of the conflict between the Seraphites and the WLF is beginning to expand and leave room for nuance. Lev humanized the Seraphites by explaining their origins and imparting some of the Prophet's wisdom onto Abby during a moment of need.
Can I give you some advice?
Oh my god.
Just think about the good parts to fear.
The good parts.
Yeah, like, you run faster. You're more focused.
Holy fuck.
You don't feel pain as much. Every bad feeling, your palms sweating, your heart racing, they're all signs you're actually stronger. So when you feel afraid, you should think about how your body is getting ready for what's coming. Only when weak may I carry my true strength.
Throughout the trip, Lev challenged Abby's prejudice towards the Seraphites, demonstrating to her that not all Seraphites think alike.
I wonder if your prophet had any idea what she was starting.
She saved dozens of people in ways no one can explain.
She blew up trucks and killed some soldiers. Not that hard to explain.
Have you read her writings?
Skimmed some.
You'd benefit from it.
Sure.
If this conversation sounds familiar, it's because it's nearly the same one she had with Owen at the aquarium 3 years ago, only this time, Abby is on the other side of it.
I just don't understand how anybody willingly joins the Scars.
Why not?
Because they're an insane cult. That's why.
Well, in the QZs, people would refer to the Fireflies as terrorists. Fanatics.
We were naive. We weren't fanatical.
We blew up checkpoints and assassinated soldiers.
It's not the same.
These two conversations perfectly encapsulate one of the game's prevalent themes, which is tribalism. They demonstrate people's tendency to show bias in favor of things they understand over things they don't, and to justify their own actions while condemning others, when in reality, everyone is doing what they think is right with the information they have. This notion is exacerbated in the world of The Last of Us, where everyone is disconnected from the world at large, with no internet, news, or even a postage system to keep them informed of other perspectives and ways of life. People in this world only tend to understand whatever environment they find themselves in, whether from birth or by circumstance. Abby, like most young people born post-outbreak, is very influenced by her immediate surroundings. She was presumably raised within the ranks of the Fireflies and embraced their ideals. Now that she has been with the WLF for several years, she has embodied their xenophobic and ruthless way of life.
How long you been using that thing?
My bow? Since forever.
You're good with it.
You should have seen Yara. Why did they do that to her?
We can be cruel.
My mom would say that. About wolves.
Well, she wasn't wrong.
Her time with Lev has opened her eyes to a new perspective, and the idea that not everything is as clear-cut as the WLF, and maybe even the Fireflies, made things out to be.
So, you like this prophet even though her followers want to kill you in her name?
She wouldn't want any of this. Her writings don't have violence in them.
You should tell that to your people.
We weren't stoning or hanging people until after she died. They're taking her words and twisting them. Read the text.
Okay.
Lev also asked her questions which forced her to reckon with her own violent past, her own contribution to the losses the Seraphites have suffered at the hands of the WLF, and the impact this has had on their community.
How many Seraphites have you killed?
Why?
Curious.
I don't know.
Is it true that Isaac took down the old guard?
Fedra, yeah.
I hear he tortures people.
Let's not talk about this now.
Okay. Have you ever tortured people?
Let's focus on getting out of here.
Lev even got her to change her vocabulary from scars, the more derogatory term the WLF adopted for them, to Seraphites.
God damn it.
Who is he?
I don't know.
Isn't he a wolf?
There are thousands of us. Do you know every scar?
Stop calling us scars.
Sure. Scars built all this?
Seraphites.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Abby still demonstrated bursts of judgment, though, but Lev always came through with a matter-of-factness that Abby may have recognized in her younger self.
Spores. Masks on.
I don't have one.
Do you guys not believe in gas masks?
We were on the run.
During the climb up the skyscraper, Lev intuited that Abby is afraid of heights, and eventually opened up about his own fears as a way of connecting with her.
How are you not terrified of this? And don't quote the prophet to me.
Heights never scared me.
What does?
The ocean, dogs.
So, Abby and Lev have just returned from this perilous journey facing literal hell and high water to get these medical supplies, and are currently waiting outside the operating room while Mel performs this amputation surgery on Yara. Characters are always seeking something from their scene partner, whether it be something tangible that the character wants or an answer to a more subconscious need. In this scene, Abby is struggling to answer the question that Owen and Lev both asked her earlier in the day. Why is she doing this? Why did she go back for those 2 kids? Why did she risk her life to get the medical supplies for Yara? Perhaps she is seeking an answer from Owen, or maybe she's using him as a sounding board to try and put it into words herself. Owen is probably wondering the same thing. Perhaps he has seen the change in Abby over the past 12 or so hours and is trying to determine whether he actually got through to her, whether their encounter from the night before is the cause for her apparent change of heart, and what that means for their relationship going forward. This, of course, is exactly what Mel will accuse Abby of the following day, but that's a scene for another video. One of my favorite things about the Last of Us series is the writer's ability to get across the essence of what a scene is really about in as few lines of dialogue as possible. This is partially due to the writer's talent, but also because Naughty Dog has the technology to capture the actors' micro-expressions so that much of the storytelling can come through in their body language and facial performance capture. Now that we've covered the context, given circumstances, and desired outcomes of this scene, we can analyze the dialogue from what the characters say to what they actually mean. The underlying unspoken meaning to any line of dialogue is called subtext, and in this game, as well as any other piece of good dramatic writing, the subtext is rich and nuanced, and is as essential to the story as the actual words being spoken aloud.
Hey, Alice. Hey. You want a pet her? It's okay. Yeah, see?
During their journey to the hospital, Lev shared with Abby that he's afraid of dogs. I think it's likely that Lev is afraid of dogs because the only ones he's encountered have been the trained war dogs owned by the WLF, whose purpose is to sniff out and hunt down Seraphites. Abby introducing him to Alice and getting him to connect with her is Abby's way of showing Lev the same lesson he taught her during their trip, which is that not everyone on the opposite side is the same.
All done. You can go see her now if you want.
Is she gonna be okay?
Yeah, actually.
This line suggests that it may have been touch and go for a while. Maybe it's because Yara's arm was in such terrible shape when she arrived at the aquarium. Maybe the surgery itself was difficult, and I imagine it would be given the limited supplies and apparent lack of anesthetic. The way Owen delivers this line suggests that he is pleasantly surprised, and maybe even relieved by the outcome. He also sounds tired and has likely been helping Mel with the surgery for however many hours, the whole time wondering why on earth they were doing it to begin with, and thus a question, unasked but there nonetheless, hangs in the air between them. Why are we doing this?
Hey.
They're just kids.
This is what I mean when I say Naughty Dog has the ability to rely on actors' performances to get the subtext across. You can see the deliberation on Abby's face before she finally utters this line. She's struggling to come up with words that could even begin to answer that unasked question, especially since she may not even understand the full magnitude of it yet. But if there's one thing she knows for certain after her journey with Lev, it is that at the end of the day, no matter the faction or the label, Lev and Yara are just kids. Kids who have been rejected by their own tribe simply for expressing themselves. Kids with a point of view different from her own, but not riddled with evil and ignorance like she believed all Seraphites to be. Kids who, for all they know, have lost their family and their way of life. Kids who might, in a way, remind her of her younger self.
Is he still in the fucking building?
Is it?
Abby.
No!
Abby, don't look.
Dad! Dad! No! No!
Young Abby also needed love and acceptance and someone to take care of her. And though she was robbed of that, Maybe she's starting to realize that she can be that for Lev and Yara so that they don't need to endure what she did, or worse, follow in her footsteps. Perhaps taking care of Lev and Yara can be her way to heal her own inner child.
They're just kids.
I know.
Owen is one step ahead of Abby on this journey, rather than say, "I told you so," because that would be unkind and obviously unappreciated by Abby, whom he knows better than anyone. He's validating her and watching her come to the same conclusion herself.
What happened to us?
When Joel attacked the Firefly Hospital, the Salt Lake crew were also just kids, whose lives were turned upside down overnight. Kids who had hope for the future and for humanity. Kids who thought they were doing good in the world and believed in a cause bigger than themselves. Kids who were compassionate and kind. What happened to us? When did we lose sight of that hope? When did we stop caring about the greater good and become so entrenched in this pointless turf war? When did we stop seeing people as people? You could also replace every we in those questions with I and change us to me, which is probably what she is actually asking, but maybe she's not yet ready for the immense vulnerability of that question. What happened to me? By using the royal we or us, she can explore these concepts in a way that feels more safe, but Owen will understand nonetheless.
Maybe we stop looking for the light.
This is a reference to the Firefly's motto, which was,
When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
Owen is implying that they have been lost in the darkness now for years and stopped looking for the light. The light in this case goes far beyond the meaning that the Fireflies imbued in their slogan. For the Fireflies, the light represented their desire to go back to a pre-outbreak way of life. Their aim was to cure the infection and restore order in society and re-establish the pre-outbreak government. Owen and Abby, having been born after the outbreak, have no idea what that world looked like, therefore don't possess the same longing to return to a life they never knew. So for them, the light that Owen is referring to could simply mean hope. Hope for humanity to persevere, to do good, to endure and survive. He's saying they were lost in the darkness of this feud over land that was never their home, the darkness of grief and despair and hatred, and stopped hoping for a better future for themselves or humanity as a whole. Maybe they let go of any faith that such a thing was even possible. Essentially, Owen is saying that they lost sight of who they really are.
Maybe. I'm gonna go check on the girl.
Okay.
As I suggested earlier, I think Owen has already come to this conclusion, and now he's saying it to Abby in a way that is much more direct than what he tried to tell her the night before. During their conversation on the boat, Abby rejected the very notion of the Fireflies, despite the fact that she used to believe in them and her father once led them. Owen repurposing their slogan, a saying of her father's, to help Abby wrestle with what she is feeling is incredibly powerful and definitely hits home with her. Owen's words have brought her closer to her father than she has felt in years. I've seen some people say that this change in Abby happens too quickly, but you have to remember that the Abby we meet at the beginning of the game isn't the real her. That is an angry, bitter, resentful shell of her former self, marred by rage and grief, indoctrinated by the WLF at a young age, with Isaac likely taking advantage of Abby's anger to turn her into one of his top soldiers. Part of Owen's goal throughout the game is to get Abby to reconnect with her former self, to bring her back towards the light. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, due to Owen being a constant reminder of the pain her former life ended with, she was unable to acquiesce to his proddings. Lev, however, is a new person in Abby's life who doesn't know who she used to be and barely knows who she is now. This is an opportunity, perhaps, for her to reinvent herself and start anew. Considering she embarked on this mission to save these kids because she saw them in her nightmare, hanging in the same room she once discovered her father's body, it's clear her subconscious is trying to tell her that there is a better way to heal, and finally, she's listening to it. As I mentioned before, the Firefly motto is extremely significant to this story, beyond the reasons the Fireflies themselves adopted it, and is the motif for the overarching theme of the entire series. Someone's light is their reason for continuing on and fighting to survive in this brutal world. All of the main characters are lost in the darkness at the start of their journeys, and their stories are all about finding the light in some way, whether it be taking care of a child or finally learning to forgive and let go.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
We fight for every second we get to spend with each other. Whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days, we don't give that up.
May her light guide us through the storm.
When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
What's that?
Something my dad used to say.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can be alerted when more analyses like this one get posted. And let me know in the comments which scene you'd like me to analyze next. Also, follow me on TikTok as I'm a bit more active over there. Until next time, endure and survive.